This is Innovledia.
Hello and welcome back. Well, now that you know how to do 3D modeling, shading, lighting, animation and rendering, it is time for another practical session here which will cover all those concepts that you learned in the previous lessons. Alright? So what I am going to make is a 3D title animation which you can use for animating your own movie titles or any other text. Okay? So let us begin by creating our text. Go to the Create menu and click on Type. Let me dolly out a little. Within the Attribute Editor, go to this Type 1 tab on Node and change this 3D type to any title that you want to create. I am going to change it to Hulk. You can select the font from this drop-down. I am selecting this font, HUMNST 777. Okay? You can download this font from the internet. Still, I have included this font within the exercise files. Alright? Now below, under the Text tab, set the alignment to center and leave the rest to default. Under the Geometry tab, set the curve resolution to 10. This will increase the number of edges or polygons across the curvature of the letters, such as U, making the surface nicely smooth. Okay? If we scroll down, under the Extrusion section, set the Extrude Divisions to 1 to reduce the subdivisions across the depth of the letters. Currently, all these letters are behaving as one object, like a word, but I need to separate them so that later each one of them can be animated separately. Okay? So, right-click on the letters and switch to the face mode. Select all these faces that make the letter H. Go to Edit Mesh and click on Extract. Go back to the object mode. In the same way, you have to extract the other letters too. So, let me select all these faces on the letter U. Go to Edit Mesh and click on Extract. Then select all the faces on letter L. Go to Edit Mesh and click on Extract. You don't have to extract the letter K, as it has already been separated from the rest. Alright? Now select all of them and delete their history by going to the Edit menu, then Delete by Type and click on History. This is necessary so that we can have fresh objects which can be animated. Go to the Windows menu and open the Outliner and expand all these nested items until there is nothing more to expand, and bring all these polysurface items with the grid icon just below the Type Mesh node, and delete the rest, which are nothing, just null objects. They become created as we start extracting the letters one by one. Okay? So hit the delete button. Now I'm going to rename everything here. Select the object, press enter, type a name, and press enter again. Select the object, press enter, type a name, and press enter again. Let me put them in order. This one acts as a null object that holds the 4 letters together in a group. A null object is an object without a surface or form. It just acts as a placeholder and is not visible in the output. Alright? Let me close the outliner. Now I am going to add bevel to all the corners of each of these letters. Select H, go to Edit Mesh and click on Bevel. Set the fraction to 0.15 to decrease the width of the bevel, and set the segments to 4 to make the bevel rounded, and leave the rest to default. Alright? Now switch to the Edge mode and select all the edges of U. Go to the top view, deselect the middle ones that make the curvature of you. Go back to the perspective view and reselect these corner edges. Go to Edit Mesh and click on Bevel. Enter the same values again. Then select L and bevel it too and set these values. Then select the last letter K. Click on Bevel and set these values too. Now H and K have problems with n-gons. Just look at these corners. These are n-gons. Here on H and here on K. It will affect the shading in these areas. So we have to remove these edges which are unnecessary. Select H, switch to the edge mode, select these edges and hit Ctrl+Delete to remove them. We have to do the same thing on the back side of H. Well, this entire back and front faces are also a kind of an n-gon. It has just so many sides. But as I'm not going to use smoothing on them, so it is okay for now. It won't be much of a problem in this case. But it can definitely be fixed using the multicut tool by splitting the n-gons into quadrilaterals. Now we have to repeat the same process on this letter K. Select it and switch to the edge mode. Select these 4 edges on the front and hit Ctrl+Delete. Go to the back side, select the 4 edges here as well and hit Ctrl+Delete. Alright? Now you will notice that as we select any of these letters, all of them have their pivots located right at the origin, which is the center of the grid. Hence, select all of these letters, go to the Modify menu and click on Center Pivot. Let me open the outliner and select this movie title group and click on Center Pivot again. Now I am going to animate these letters, but first I am going to create a camera. Go to the Create menu, then Cameras and click on Camera. Rename it to Render Cam. Then go to the channel box and set these values to position the camera. Then lock all the attributes except for Translate Z, which I am going to animate. Now we can hide the grid by clicking here and then switch to that camera view by going to Panels, Perspective and click on Render Cam. Now activate the resolution gate by clicking here. This helps us see the boundary or portion of the frame which will be rendered. And then select this entire title and position it properly. Set its Translate X value to -0.7 to make the spacing of left and right equal. Okay, let me close the outliner. So with this, our title is ready. Let us move on to animation. Set the frame rate to 60 frames per second and we are going to use 240 frames in total. So this should be 1 and this should be 240. In this way, we are going to have 240 frames on the time slider. Now, to reveal this title, I am going to animate the camera, which will move away from the title. Alright? Go to the View menu and click on Select Camera. And then we can set keyframes on the time slider for Translate Z to create an animation. So move this slider to the first frame and set this translate Z to -2. Right click on it and select key selected. Then move to the 90th frame and set this value to 60. Right click on it and select key selected. Then move to the last frame and set this value to 80. Right click on it and select key selected. So the animation will start from a value of -2 and stop at value 80, and all this will happen within 240 frames, which is like 4 seconds of time. Alright? If I switch to full screen mode and then switch to the 4 view and just dolly out, you will be able to see the camera. If I bring up the time slider and go from frame to frame, you will see how the camera is moving away from the title as I move forward in time. Let me open the graph editor by going to the Windows menu, then Animation Editors, and click on Graph Editor. All you have to do is select the first keyframe and click on Linear Tangents option. Then select the second keyframe and adjust its tangent to make this curve smooth. Make sure this curve doesn't go above this line of value 80. Otherwise, it will create a jerk in the animation. Okay? Now, what do you understand by this curve and the graph? This horizontal axis is time, and this vertical axis represents the values for translate Z. Okay? The animation will start very fast until the 90th frame, from where it will slow down, finally ending on frame 240. And how do we know that the animation will start fast and end slowly? It is simple. We do that by measuring change over time. If there is a lot of change within less time, then the animation will be fast. And if there is a small change within more time, then the animation will be slow. Alright? Let me close the graph editor and switch to the perspective view and exit from full screen mode. Go to the 90th frame, select all these letters, right click on rotate Y and select key selected to set a keyframe for all of these letters. Then move to the first frame and change this value to 90 degrees. And then right click and set a keyframe again. Now what will happen is that as we scrub through time, these letters will rotate along the y-axis from 90 degrees to 0 degrees. And all this will happen within 90 frames, which is like 1.5 seconds. Alright? So there are two animations here now. One is the camera animation, which will move away from the title over time, and another is the title animation, where the letters will rotate over time. So as the camera moves backward, the letters will rotate, revealing the title Hulk. Okay? So with this, our animation is complete. Let us move on to shading. Let me open the Hypershade by going to the Windows menu, Rendering Editors, and click on Hypershade. Go to the shader list and click on AI Standard Surface. Rename it to AI Steel. Turn this weight value to 1 and set this metalness to 1 as well, and leave the rest to default. That's it. This will create a fully metallic shader with diffused reflections. Alright? Now select all these letters, go back to Hypershade, right click on the shader and select Assign Material to Selection. Then close the Hypershade. This will make it appear black. Why black? Because the material is reflective, and as there is nothing around to reflect, no lights, no environment, so it appears black. So with this, our shading is complete. Now let us move on to lighting. I'm going to use an HDRI lighting setup for this title, because in that way, this material will have a complete environment to reflect to the camera. Okay? So, let us go to the Arnold menu, then Lights, and click on Sky Dome Light. Go to the Attribute Editor, select this Shape node, and click on this checkered box beside the Color attribute. Create a File node. Let me rename these nodes. And then click on this folder icon to browse the HDRI file. Select the HDRI and click on Open. Now select the Sky Dome light by clicking here within the viewport and change the intensity to 0.5 and the resolution to 4000 because the HDRI is 4K. Scroll below, turn the samples to 4 and also the volume samples to 4. And under the visibility section, turn this camera attribute to 0. This will make the light not visible to the camera directly. It will only be visible through reflections. So in that way, this HDRI will only be used as a light and not as a background. Okay? Now I can just do a quick render to see how everything is looking at this stage. Go to the renderer menu and click on Arnold and click on this render button. You just have to deselect the Sky Dome light to make it disappear from this render. Now this is where you get to see the result of everything we just did. Like, take a look at these highlights on the corners. That is happening only because of adding bevel. And this reflective material is reflecting all the light that is coming from the HDRI or the Sky Dome light. And all those reflections are diffused or blurry. Okay? Now we have to make adjustments to the light in order to have better reflections on these letters. Select the Sky Dome light and activate the channel box and rotate it a little or simply enter these values. Then just deselect it. Now we have a much better shot where it looks great. However, this is not the end. I would like to add another light which will create highlights from behind the letters and also help fill up this empty background which is currently dark now. So let me stop the live render and close this window. Go to the Create menu, then under Lights, click on Spotlight. Switch to the side view and enter these location values and rotate it by 143 degrees along the x-axis. This is the back side of the title and the light will be facing this way. Okay? Then go to the attribute editor and set the decay rate to quadratic and turn this cone angle to max and set the drop off to 10. Then scroll down and expand the Arnold section. Check this box for using color temperature and set the temperature to 4000 Kelvin. Set this exposure to 11 and the samples to 3, the radius to 10 and the volume samples to 3 as well. All these attributes have been explained in the previous lessons, so I am not going through them again. Alright? Now switch to the perspective view and deselect the light. And let us check out the result by rendering it again. Take a look at these reflections on the bottom side of these letters. This is coming from the spotlight that I just added to this scene. This actually acts as a rim light from behind. Okay? Now there is one last thing that I would like to add to this scene, which is the atmospheric effect. Open the render settings, go to the Arnold Renderer tab, go to the environment section, click on this checkered box for the atmosphere attribute and select Create AI Atmosphere Volume. then close the settings. Then within the attribute editor, set its density to 0.01. That's it. Now we have light within the background, like a volume, alright? You should always check out the scene at different frames to see if the shading and lighting is appearing correct across all the frames in an animation. So make sure you definitely go through random frames when lighting your animated scene. Just use this live preview to monitor the result, okay? Now it is time to render our title animation. Go to the 50th frame. You can see how much noise there is on the surface. We can fix all these issues within the render settings. You just have to open it and increase the specular samples to 5 and press enter. And look at the output. The noise has been reduced. Okay? This is how the quality of the output can be controlled. So, I'm just going to quickly set all these values for a good quality rendering. Okay? Let me stop the live render and close this window. Now let us go to the Common tab and set the image format, the frame extension, then the frame padding, and set the range of frames that have to be rendered, which is going to be 1 to 240. Then select the camera that will be used to render the scene, which in our case is the render cam. And then finally select the image size, which is going to be Full HD. After all these are set, you can close this window. Switch to the rendering menu set, go to the render menu, and click on this box icon for render sequence. Here, we just have to select the location for the output by clicking on this folder icon. Like I said in an earlier lesson, that you can always create a new folder to store an image sequence. So here we have to do that. Click here to create the folder, rename it, and then select it. Now you just have to click on the render sequence button and wait for the render to finish. Once the rendering is finished, you are going to find all the images inside the images folder within this folder that we had created earlier. Okay? So here are all the frames rendered as PNG images that we call an image sequence. Now we can import this sequence into After Effects and make some color corrections or add some effects and finally render it out as an MP4 video. Alright? In the end, what you will get is this result. Okay? In this way, you can create your own title animations in Maya. Alright? So with this, our title animation is complete. Now everything I did in this practical was initially planned, and then I executed it here to get this result. You always have to either imagine or make a storyboard on a paper to plan what you are going to do or how you are going to animate. You cannot just jump into creating anything like this. It always requires planning, either in mind or on paper, to achieve a good result. Okay? Now, the rest of the practicals, you may find them in PDF and not in videos. That is because I want to give you the opportunity to do something by yourself so that you don't have to become dependent on me or anybody else. This is necessary for the growth and development of your mind. However, you will always find step-by-step videos on our YouTube channel. But at first, I want you to try by yourself and then look for help, okay? So you can always visit that channel if you need more help or want to learn something more, alright? See you in the next video.